There's a pattern that has destroyed every major empire in history. Not conquest, not invasion, not revolution. It's money. More precisely, it is the moment when the people running an empire start believing they can defy the math of money. That debt doesn't matter. That printing solves problems. That confidence will last forever. Rome, the empire that ruled half the world for 500 years, collapsed not because of foreign armies, but because its currency became worthless. Spain, which once owned half the world's gold, went bankrupt 4 times in 40 years. Britain, which dominated global trade for 2 centuries, lost its empire within a generation after the pound collapsed. And now, the United States, the current global empire, the current reserve currency, is following the exact same pattern. Step by step. Warning sign by warning sign. Every empire believes it's different, that modern systems, technology, or politics somehow make them immune to the old rules. But history doesn't care about innovation or optimism. It only cares about math. 4 times in recorded history, an empire has followed the same sequence: military overreach, unsustainable spending, currency debasement, inflation, loss of confidence, collapse. Every single time, it starts with good intentions, to fund safety, stability, prosperity, and ends in chaos. And as of 2025, every red flag that warned of previous collapses is flashing again. The only question left is, are we at the beginning, the middle, or the end of the cycle? This is the story of how money itself destroys empires, how the same logic that built fortunes and armies eventually turns into the very thing that ends them. Rome proved the pattern. Spain repeated it. Britain perfected it. And America is next in line. Rome wasn't just the first superpower. It was the first to collapse under the weight of its own money. At its peak, Rome controlled more than 60 million people across 3 continents. Its roads connected the ancient world. Its armies crushed every rival. And its currency, the denarius, was as trusted as gold itself. The denarius was simple. A small silver coin introduced in 201 BC, containing about 4.5 grams of pure silver. It worked because everyone believed in it. When you got paid in denarii, you knew what you were holding. Real value, real metal. But empires are expensive. Every mile of new road, every fortress on the border, every soldier on the frontier, all needed to be paid. And Rome's appetite for expansion was limitless. So the emperors did what every empire eventually does when it spends more than it earns. They changed the money. Emperor Nero, ruling from 54 AD, was the first to clip the coin S purity from 100% silver down to 90%. 10% less silver meant 10% more coins could be minted with the same metal. A clever trick. And an invisible tax on everyone who held the currency. But once that line was crossed, there was no going back. Each emperor that followed found it easier to print their way out of trouble. By the time of Emperor Caracalla, the denarius was only 50% silver. A century later, under Emperor Gallienus, it contained just 5%. The rest was worthless base metal, coated in a thin silver wash. A coin that once was money had become a lie, stamped with the emperor's face. The effects were catastrophic. Prices skyrocketed. What cost 1 denarius in the year 200 cost 50 by the year 300. Farmers stopped accepting coins entirely, demanding food, gold, or barter instead. Soldiers refused to fight unless they were paid in something real. The economy didn't collapse overnight. It seized like a machine running out of oil. And when the money stopped working, everything built on it, the armies, the roads, the empire itself, fell apart. By 476 AD, the Western Roman Empire was gone. Not conquered, but hollowed out from within. The empire that built civilization destroyed itself by diluting the one thing that made civilization possible: trust in its money. Rome proved the pattern. Every empire since has copied it, convinced they could cheat the math just a little longer than the last one. Spain, the empire that drowned in its own silver. If Rome collapsed by running out of silver, Spain collapsed by finding too much of it. In the 1500s, Spain was the richest empire the world had ever seen. It conquered new worlds, claimed entire continents, and discovered mountains made of treasure. In 1545, Spanish explorers found something so vast it sounded mythical. Cerro Rico, the rich mountain in what is now Bolivia. It wasn't just a mine, it was the largest deposit of silver ever discovered. For nearly a century, the silver from that single mountain financed an empire. Ships loaded with treasure crossed the Atlantic, turning Spain into the center of global wealth. The Spanish dollar, the real one, not today's version, became the first truly global currency. It was accepted from London to Manila, from the New World to the Great Wall. Spain's kings built palaces of marble. Its fleets ruled the oceans. Its nobles believed they were chosen by God to rule forever. But just like Rome, the numbers didn't add up. Because when you flood the world with money, money becomes worthless. By 1600, Spain's endless flow of silver caused runaway inflation across Europe. Prices of basic goods increased tenfold in less than a century. A loaf of bread that cost 1 silver coin under Ferdinand now cost 10 under Philip. And while Spain was drowning in silver, it wasn't building anything. No factories, no industry, no innovation. They didn't make products. They just bought them. Luxury fabrics from France, weapons from the Netherlands, ships built in England. The silver they mined went right back out to pay for goods they couldn't produce. And when they couldn't pay their debts, they did what every empire does. They borrowed more. By 1557, Spain was so deep in debt that King Philip II declared the world's first sovereign bankruptcy. It wouldn't be the last. They defaulted again in 1560. Again in 1575. Again in 1596. 4 times in just 40 years, while sitting on half the world's silver supply. It's the perfect paradox of empire. Spain had all the money in the world, and somehow still went broke, because they confused having money with creating value. By the mid-1600s, the silver was running out. The debts were unpayable, and the empire that once ruled the oceans was now selling its ships for scrap. Spain didn't fall because its enemies grew stronger. It fell because its own economy was built on extraction instead of creation. The pattern was clear again. Unimaginable wealth, unsustainable spending, inflation, collapse. And just like Rome before it, Spain believed it had discovered a new kind of empire, one that would last forever. It didn't. If Rome destroyed its money and Spain drowned in it, Britain borrowed itself to death. At its height, the British Empire ruled over a quarter of the world's population and landmass. From India to Africa, from Canada to Australia, the sun truly never set on the Union Jack. And the foundation of it all wasn't gold or land, it was trust in the pound. For over 200 years, the British pound sterling was the world's most powerful currency. It was backed by gold, trusted by merchants, and used to settle global trade. If you held a British pound, you held a promise backed by the most advanced empire on earth. But empires are expensive. Britain's dominance came with a price tag: endless colonies to administer, armies to fund, navies to maintain, and wars to win. By the early 1900s, the empire's ambitions far exceeded its balance sheet. Then came World War I. In 1914, Britain's national debt was about $650 million. By the time the war ended 5 years later, that number had exploded to over $7 billion, a tenfold increase in just one war. To pay for it, Britain suspended the gold standard. The pound, once as solid as gold itself, was suddenly just paper backed by faith. When the war ended, they tried to pretend nothing had changed. In 1925, Winston Churchill, then Chancellor of the Exchequer, made the fateful decision to restore the pound's link to gold at the pre-war exchange rate. It was a political move, not an economic one, and it nearly destroyed the economy overnight. Exports collapsed, factories shut down, unemployment soared. Britain had overvalued its currency to look powerful, but that pride cost them everything. By 1931, they abandoned gold again. The pound was devalued, and for the first time in centuries, trust began to erode. Then came World War II, another global conflict Britain could not afford. The empire borrowed and printed on a scale never seen before. By 1945, Britain's debt had reached 270% of its GDP, the highest in its history. When the war ended, victory came with bankruptcy. Entire cities were in ruins. Rationing continued for years, and Britain owed more to the United States than it could ever repay. At the Bretton Woods Conference in 1944, the new global order was written. The US dollar became the world's reserve currency, and the British pound lost the status it had held for 2 centuries. The collapse wasn't instant. It was slow, humiliating, and irreversible. By 1949, Britain had to devalue the pound by 30%. By 1967, another devaluation. By the 1970s, inflation was over 20%. The empire that had controlled 1/4 of the earth was begging the IMF for a bailout. Britain hadn't been invaded. It hadn't lost a war. It had simply spent more than it earned for too long. And when the debt came due, its currency couldn't hold. The pattern appeared again. War debt, overextension, money printing, devaluation, collapse. An empire that believed its currency was untouchable learned the same lesson Rome and Spain did centuries before. No currency survives arrogance and debt. Every empire believes it's different. Every empire thinks it's smarter than the ones that came before. And every empire ends up proving it's not. The United States is no exception. For nearly 80 years, the US dollar has ruled the world. After World War II, the Bretton Woods Agreement made the dollar the foundation of global finance. It was as good as gold. Literally. $35 equaled 1 ounce of gold, and every major economy tied its currency to the dollar. America had what Rome, Spain, and Britain all wanted: global trust. But then the spending began. The Cold War, the Vietnam War, the Great Society programs, a military presence in every corner of the world. By the late 1960s, the US was printing more dollars than it had gold to back them. Foreign governments noticed. France, led by Charles de Gaulle, began demanding gold in exchange for dollars, and gold started leaving Fort Knox by the ton. In 1971, President Nixon made a decision that changed money forever. He closed the gold window. No more gold backing, no more convertibility. The dollar became what it still is today, a fiat currency, backed by nothing but faith. At first, it looked like a triumph. The economy surged. America's global dominance continued. But the foundation had shifted. Now the government could print without limit. And it did. By the 1980s, debt was climbing fast. By the 2000s, trillion-dollar deficits were normal. Then came 2008, the financial crisis that should have been a wake-up call. Instead, it became an excuse to print trillions more. Quantitative easing, a fancy phrase for creating money from nothing, became official policy. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet exploded. And when COVID hit, the printing went into overdrive. Between 2020 and 2022, the US created more new dollars than it had in the previous century combined. They said it wouldn't cause inflation. They said this time was different. It wasn't. By 2022, inflation hit 9%, the highest in 40 years. Real inflation, the cost of living for ordinary people, was far higher. The dollar, once as good as gold, was now debased by design, and the world is noticing. In 2000, over 70% of global foreign reserves were held in dollars. Today, that number is closer to 58%, and falling. The BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, are building alternatives. They're trading in local currencies. They're buying gold. They're preparing for the day when the dollar is no longer king. The US is following the same 7-stage pattern as every fallen empire before it. Dominance, the world's reserve currency. Overextension, 800 military bases in 70 countries. Deficit spending, trillions in annual debt. Currency debasement, printing without restraint. Inflation, the silent tax eating the middle class. Loss of confidence, nations moving away from the dollar. Collapse, the final stage every empire denies until it's too late. The difference is scale. When Rome fell, the world carried on. When Britain collapsed, trade shifted to the dollar. But when the dollar falls, the entire global system goes with it. The pattern doesn't care about military power, technology, or politics. It only cares about math. And the math says the US is spending far more than it earns, borrowing more than it can repay, and printing money faster than it can be believed in. The same story that ended Rome, Spain, and Britain is playing out again. Only this time it's global. The end of an empire never announces itself. There's no breaking news headline that says, "The collapse has begun." It happens quietly. One bad policy at a time, one law at a time, one generation forgetting what money actually is. And every time in history, the same warning signs appear right before the fall. The first sign is denial. Governments insist everything is fine. They say debt doesn't matter. They say inflation is temporary. They say deficits are just numbers on a screen. Rome said the same thing. Spain said the same thing. Britain said the same thing. And now America says it louder than ever. The second sign is fake prosperity. Markets rise. Unemployment falls. People feel rich, but only because prices are rising faster than they realize. The wealth isn't real. It's inflated. It's the illusion that printed money creates right before it destroys. Then comes the overconfidence. The belief that this time is different. That modern economics has evolved beyond basic arithmetic. That you can print money forever as long as you're the world's reserve currency. But here's the problem. That confidence is the final stage of the pattern. Because confidence is what collapses first. Every empire's currency relies on belief. The moment that belief cracks, it's over. We saw it in Rome when soldiers refused to take debased coins. We saw it in Spain when lenders refused to lend. We saw it in Britain when the pound was dumped on global markets. And now we're seeing it again, slowly, as nations diversify away from the dollar. The fourth sign is the middle class shrinking. It happens in every single collapse. When inflation rises faster than wages, when savings lose value every year, when owning a home becomes a luxury, the middle collapses and the empire loses its core stability. Rome lost its small farmers. Spain lost its artisans. Britain lost its manufacturing base. America is losing its middle class. And the fifth, the most dangerous sign, is complacency. When people stop paying attention. When they think collapse is something that happens to other countries, to other generations, to other currencies. The people of every fallen empire said the same thing. It can't happen here. But it always can. And it always does. The moment a nation forgets that money is trust, and replaces it with debt, arrogance, and printed promises, the countdown begins. The warning signs aren't predictions, they're physics, and if you listen carefully, you can already hear them. The faint echo of history, and the familiar sound of a pattern repeating. Every empire that reaches this stage faces the same three doors. One leads to decline, one to collapse, and one to reset. The problem is, nobody ever knows which door they've chosen until it's too late. Every empire builds an illusion of wealth. Door 1, controlled decline. This is the British path. After losing the pound's reserve status, Britain accepted a smaller role in the world. It was painful, but it was peaceful. The empire vanished, but the country survived. No riots, no revolution. Just a long, slow slide from superpower to ordinary nation. Inflation eroded wealth, debt lingered for decades, but life went on. If America follows this path, it would mean accepting limits, shrinking the military footprint, cutting spending, and letting another currency share the world stage. The dollar wouldn't vanish, but it would no longer dominate. The world would adjust. The US would still exist, just smaller, humbler, and poorer. Door 2, total collapse. This is the Roman path. Currency dies, government credibility implodes, and society tears itself apart from the inside out. Rome didn't fall in a single battle. It fell over decades of currency destruction, social division, and corruption. By the time the barbarians arrived, the empire was already gone in spirit. If the US goes down this road, the results would be catastrophic. A dollar collapse would ripple across the entire global economy. Savings would evaporate overnight. Imports would become unaffordable. Pensions, salaries, and digital bank balances would become meaningless numbers. Chaos would follow, not just in America, but everywhere tied to the dollar. Door 3. Reset and restructure. This is the optimist's path. When the old currency system dies, a new one is born. It's happened before. The gold standard, the Bretton Woods system, the digital financial revolution we're seeing now. In this scenario, the dollar doesn't vanish. It transforms. Maybe it's backed by commodities again. Maybe it becomes digital. Or maybe a new global reserve currency emerges. Something like a basket of national and digital assets. It would still be painful. Inflation, devaluation, and instability. But it wouldn't be the end. It would be a reset. A chance to rebuild on something real again. History doesn't repeat perfectly, but it rhymes. Rome's fall birthed medieval Europe. Spain's decline fueled new nations. Britain's collapse paved the way for the modern dollar system. Something always rises after the fall. The question isn't whether the pattern will continue. It's what replaces the empire when it ends. Will America manage a slow, controlled decline? Will it fall suddenly like Rome? Or will it lead a global reset into a new financial age? That answer depends on whether we've learned anything from 2,000 years of mistakes, or whether we'll keep pretending the pattern doesn't exist. Every empire in history thought it had solved money. Rome thought silver coins could last forever. Spain thought infinite gold meant infinite wealth. Britain thought paper backed by promises was as good as gold. And America thinks digital money printed by a central bank is prosperity. They were all wrong, because every empire confuses money with value, and every empire forgets that money only works if people believe in it. When people lose that belief, it doesn't matter how powerful you are. Your empire is already finished. Rome's citizens once trusted the denarius so much, they buried savings in it. 100 years later, it wasn't even worth melting down. Spanish nobles were paid in silver coins that couldn't buy bread. British workers watched their pensions disappear as the pound was devalued, twice. And Americans today watch rents, groceries, and medical bills rise faster than their paychecks. It's the same story told through different currencies. Rome built marble temples, Spain built palaces, Britain built ships, and America built skyscrapers and stock markets. But behind the illusion is always the same flaw: too much debt, too much greed, too much printing, and not enough value creation. Here's the truth no empire ever admits. You can't outsmart math. You can't legislate wealth into existence. And you can't borrow prosperity from the future forever. The fall doesn't happen because one emperor, one king, or one president makes a mistake. It happens because the system runs out of real money and replaces it with belief, promises, and paper. Rome's coins became tin. Spain's silver became worthless. Britain's pound became paper. And America's dollar became digits on a screen. The tools change. The pattern doesn't. What we call modern finance, money printing, quantitative easing, zero interest rates, is the exact same trick in a new costume. Empires used to add tin to silver. Now they add zeros to spreadsheets. It's faster, cleaner, and looks smarter. But it ends the same way. Inflation isn't a glitch in the system. It's the system eating itself. It's the price of pretending money can come from nothing. Every empire learns that lesson eventually. Most learn it too late. Because when the money dies, everything built on top of it, politics, armies, empires, even trust, dies with it. That's why every empire collapses the same way. Not because of enemies, but because the money stopped being real. And when your money isn't real, neither is your power. When money collapses, it doesn't just vanish. It resets everything. Every empire that's gone through a currency death faced the same chaos first: panic, hunger, unemployment, and then something new. Because when the money dies, people remember what actually has value. After Rome's denarius turned worthless, gold and grain became the new currency. Farmers became more powerful than senators. Spain's silver collapse led to local trade systems built on trust instead of coins. After Britain lost the pound's global dominance, the world didn't end. A new system emerged, the US dollar standard. That's what always happens. When a fake system collapses, a real one is born, until it gets corrupted again. So, what happens when today's money dies? Let's start with what money really is. It's not coins, it's not paper, it's not even numbers on a screen. Money is trust. It's the collective belief that what you hold today will buy something tomorrow. When that belief disappears, so does the system. And right now, trust is disappearing faster than interest rates rise. People don't trust banks. They don't trust governments. They don't trust that their savings will still be worth something in 10 years. That's the beginning of the reset, not with violence, but with disbelief. We're already seeing the early signs. Cryptocurrencies tried to reinvent trust through code. Decentralized, ungoverned, unstoppable. It was supposed to be the new gold, but greed infected that system too. Scams, collapses, and speculation replaced real use. It became another bubble, and popped. Then came digital central bank currencies, the opposite extreme. Governments realized they could replace cash entirely with programmable money. No privacy, no freedom, but complete control. If Rome minted coins and Britain printed pounds, the next empire will code its currency. But here's the dangerous part. Resets aren't fair. They don't erase debt evenly. They don't protect everyone. They reward the few who saw it coming, and destroy the many who trusted the system until the end. When Rome fell, soldiers and farmers who hoarded gold survived. When Spain fell, merchants with trade networks adapted. When Britain fell, Americans holding dollars became the new elite. When the dollar falls, who takes their place? The answer may already exist, in the hands of whoever holds the next form of real value. Gold, data, energy, or maybe something we haven't invented yet. Because that's what money really evolves into. Whatever society believes has undeniable worth. The reset won't look like a movie scene. No explosions, no overnight collapse. It'll look like slow change that no one believes is happening until it's already done. And just like every empire before it, America will call it restructuring, modernization, or innovation. But history will call it what it always is: the end of one money and the birth of another. Every generation thinks it's living in a unique time, that the rules of money have changed, that technology, innovation, or politics make us immune to collapse. But the pattern never changed, only the packaging did. Rome's downfall looked like political chaos. Spain's looked like endless wars. Britain's looked like polite decline. Ours looks like convenience. Everything today is designed to make you feel rich while you're getting poorer. Easy credit. Endless subscriptions. Buy now, pay later. Zero down. Zero interest. Zero clue. We don't carry coins anymore. We carry invisible debt. We don't see inflation. We see limited time offers. We don't feel the collapse. We scroll through it. But make no mistake, the pattern is happening again. Empires don't fall when the money runs out. They fall when people stop believing it means anything. Look around. The signs are all there. Wages stagnant. Debt infinite. Savings meaningless. Prices rising faster than logic. And yet, the system insists everything is fine. That's exactly what Rome said before the denarius died. Exactly what Spain said before the silver turned worthless. Exactly what Britain said before the pound collapsed. And exactly what America says now. History doesn't repeat. It compounds. Each collapse happens faster because the world is more connected. The money moves quicker, and the illusions spread instantly. The next collapse won't take centuries. It'll take a decade, maybe less. And when it comes, it won't feel like the end of the world. It'll feel like the end of trust. People will stop trusting banks. Stop trusting the dollar. Stop trusting each other. And when trust disappears, money follows. But here's the part history never tells you. Collapse isn't the end. It's the audit. It's when the lies get priced in. When fake wealth gets deleted. When real value, real work, real innovation, real discipline finally matters again. Empires don't die because the world ends. They die because they forget what made them powerful: integrity, restraint, and truth. So when the next empire falls, don't look for soldiers or invaders. Look at the currency. Look at the spending. Look at the greed. Because the story of every empire is really just the story of its money. Rome's coins turned to dust. Spain's silver lost its shine. Britain's paper turned to debt. And now, the digital dollar is flickering. The pattern is older than history. But maybe, just maybe this time, we can recognize it before it completes. Because once the money dies, it never comes back the same.